In this video, we're going to show you how to install Mautic. I'm going to have a link below for the Planning Your Mautic install, just in case you missed it, but I do go through really quickly what I expect to already be set up, so that you have a good idea what it should be. I'm using cPanel with Softaculous, so if you're not using those tools, this video probably isn't for you. If you have any questions while I run through this really fast, make sure you put a comment below. If you found this video helpful, put a thumbs up. And if you're interested, subscribe to the channel. And I'll try to remind you to do the same at the end. And so let's get into this. Alright, so if you watched the planning to install Mautic video, you are at the same point I'm at right now. I'm going to do like the sprint version of what you should have set up. If you already know how to do this, then you can quickly set this up. Just pause the video and go do that. So what I'm going to want you to have is first a subdomain. So I've created mauticwouldlooklikethis.com. That will be where we are going to install our Mautic install. We will have a few email accounts set up, a bounce and a complaint, and one for you. These are only required if you're going to do all your testing of Mautic using the PHP mailer. If you're going to be doing Amazon SES, which is going to be in another video, we'll talk about how we're going to do that at that time. So let's keep going. Those are set up. We have the email account set up. We've already asked for an SSL certificate, and it has showed up for us. So Mautic would look like this. And that's for me. I'm using the cPanel ones. I don't need to buy one, and I don't actually have anybody who's ever actually made a good argument why I would buy one other than the insurance aspect of a purchased one. So we're going to be able to do HTTPS. That's what that SSL certificate proves. We know we've got email accounts set up and prepared for when we get to that point, which will be in a later video, honestly. And we've got our subdomain. So now we're going to go down to the Softaculous app installer. I'm just going to click on WordPress because that'll get me into the installer. We're here, and we're just going to search for Mautic. Now, Mautic is your marketing automation platform. Very powerful tool. If somebody's told you need to build a list, they're right. The automation platform, though, allows you to do more than just build that list. It allows you to also discover what exactly your audience is doing on your websites and other places where you put the tracking. And it really allows you to fine-tune all the checks and balances for things like clicked links and all that stuff. And the awesome part is you can do this from your hosting. So let's click install now. Now, I told you in the planning for your Mautic installation that you're going to need a couple things. So let's go through the things you need. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure this is HTTPS because we want to use that SSL certificate. It's going to be really important when we're like talking between two sites, and the internet likes it better anyways. So just do it. I've strongly suggested you use a subdomain. The reason for that is there's some quirkiness to dumping Mautic in a folder. So I like to do it better this way. Now I can go to the root of the subdomain, and I'm good to go. So for my admin username, I am going to just use my email address. I like to do that. And then I'm going to come up here. I'm going to open my strong password generator. I'm going to pick 22 characters. I'm going to hit generate password. And then I would just copy paste it. I'm going to pause the video now, generate a few more times. So this password will not work for you if you try it. But if you want to type it in, I give you permission to try. So you saw me generate that password. Now I'm going to put that the password that I've generated here. But first I'm just going to finish out the rest of this so that you aren't forced to watch. So I'm just going to put in my name. Now the settings you set here, there are two things you're going to need. You want to A, get emails from this address. So make sure it's something you actually are going to set up somewhere. And then B, it's going to be the email that is attached to Mautic's outgoing email by default. Now you can change that in the future. Under advanced settings, you've got things like the database information, and backup settings. We don't need to touch them today, so I'm just going to say move on. So I'm going to basically click install, but first I'm going to put in the correct password. It's open to the world if I don't do it any other way. Maybe I can hide it. Oh, I can't hide it. So I'm going to hide it. I'm going to paste it. Yay, it's strong. And it better be because I used the strong password generator. Then I'm going to click install. Sure. So I just saved those to my password managers. And now I have this. Now both these links essentially go to the same place. So completely irrelevant which one you click. Close that. And we no longer need Softaculous for today. We're going to come back and review the cron jobs in a future video, so stay tuned for that. If this video is more than 5 days old, that cron job video should be linked in the description below. So I'm logging in. Oh, I used the wrong password. Try this again. And we're in. Sure. I actually went into the site beforehand, and I did the entire install so that when I came to do the instruction, you'd get really clear instructions and you wouldn't have me blithering a little bit. I'm working hard on making sure that I don't ramble for my audience as I ramble. So we're going to go to the little gear up here. We're going to click configuration. It's going to bring up this configuration area. So the first thing I'm going to strongly recommend is you open a text editor. If you don't have one, download Atom. I love it, but it doesn't really matter. Any old text editor will do. Even a plain old notepad. If you're on Windows, or I don't know what it's called on Mac. I'm in Linux, so yeah, but I have Atom. That's where I normally do this. So we're going to put this here. What this is your application directory, and you're going to need that. So everything up to the /cache, you're going to need this for when we set up the cron jobs. So it'll make your life easier if you remember that it's here under general settings. I leave all this stuff default. I don't see any reason to change it. The relatives path are fine. And then default mauve theme. We're going to talk a bunch about themes eventually, but it's just the one that it's going to pick by, like, it's, I don't think it matters which theme you default to personally, so I don't worry about it. Okay, so now you get to your system defaults. I am going to choose the time zone I'm in. I don't know, can you actually just type mountain? Anyways, I'm in Mountain Standard Time. Edmonton's the closest major city to where I is, and so that's why I chose Edmonton. You want to set this default time zone to where you are, or your time zone, because if you're doing anything that requires you to schedule a date or to work with time in general, especially like if you're going to broadcast on a certain date and you're going to set up, it is easier for you to think in your time zone than to be like, oh, so GMT minus that. Like, just make it easier so you don't mess with your own head, because I find it insanely frustrating to even figure out the difference between two places that I'm familiar with the difference between the two places. I work remotely a lot of the time, and if I'm working with somebody on the East Coast, when I'm almost on the West Coast, you're always like, was it 2.5 hours in new? Right? Like it makes sense for you to think in your time, because then it's easy to be like, I want it to leave at midnight. Bam. You can change the date format if you want. If you highlight or scroll over here, you'll see how to set that up. I mean, these are fairly common. I'm going to leave, again, everything default because it doesn't matter to me. What it is right now, I don't have any reason to change it. And that's going to be a recurring theme to what I say. If you don't have a reason to change something, don't. Like, especially if you're not super technical, most softwares, and the softwares I'm going to show you, do a pretty good job of setting things default ready to work. So here you're going to type in your website address. If I can type in my website address. So this domain I bought actually a long time ago. And I bought it because it's really cool when you can put like, McDonald's car wash would look like this. Your hair salon would look like, right? So you can actually put the customer's name, and then dot would look like this, and you can send them like the future version of their website or whatever you're working on. So CORS stands for Cross-Origin Resource Sharing. So I only want to allow it to share with a specific domain. This I got shown to set up at some point, and I'm going to dig into it in another video in depth, because I don't want to give you misinformation. So I have in the past always set this up to reflect my website, whichever website I'm going to be installing my tracking to and placing my forms on. Again, I will come back to this in a future video. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get to this, because I don't know if it's going to fall high in my priorities, but that's basically why I set that one. And clearly it's required if you've said yes to this. And then because of licensing, it could not automatically put the lookup service directly into Mautic. So they require you to pull this data after Mautic's been installed. This is the data the service we want. There's a bunch in here, but this one is the one I always use, as it allows you to take an IP address that's been tracked on your site and associate it right to a city often. So we just click Fetch IP Lookup Data Store, and that will say success, and now you've downloaded a data store. You're ready to go. I, at this time, have no IPs that I care about not tracking contacts with. You may want to do that for IPs that you know specifically you're going to work from. And then they've got the capacity to set up your URL shortener. I guess Bitly has a special way to do that. I'm not going to bother with that because I don't have any reason to at this time. And so that is the settings for the system settings. And I'm going to apply. And because of Mautic being Mautic, I have taken to making sure that I click apply after every area. The last thing is, if you are experimenting on a test site, you can actually choose different versions to have Mautic install. I don't want any sketchy beta version on a production site, and so I actually, unless I have a specific reason for going to check it out, and again, I would install a separate subdomain to go play with this. I don't typically do anything but stable, and you shouldn't either if you're testing to use this in a production environment. The API settings. If you're going to use Mautic alongside a WordPress, you're going to turn these on. That's because that's how WordPress's plugin attaches to Mautic externally, so that you have access to the forms and whatnot in WordPress. So I'm going to leave these off for now because I don't have Mautic installed on a WordPress site, and it's best practice in my opinion. If you don't have a place for them to go yet, don't turn them on. We can always turn them on as soon as we've installed the plugin in WordPress, and that is exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in that order. So I'm going to click apply again, even though I didn't change anything, because I'm paranoid and I want to make sure that I know what settings have been set. Your asset settings. So if you have a great big PDF and it's 8 megs, maybe you need to increase this. This is the default location for files that you upload as assets. I think they're under components. Yeah, so there's assets that you're going to have on your site, and then this tells what Mautic is allowed to share as extensions. If you have a specialty file that you want to share via email, make sure that you add that extension here. They got basically all the defaults, I think. I'm surprised they don't have any of the Adobe flavors, but we're open sourcers and Adobe's the devil. No. So, like I said, if you have a specific file format that you would like to allow, make sure you put it here so that the assets can be actually contained. Your campaign settings, I've always left this as is. Essentially, if something fails, it'll try again in 1 hour. By fails, it means Mautic didn't actually do what it was supposed to. As opposed to, like, if you get a bounce or you get those things aren't considered failures, right? So if I failed to deliver the message, isn't what they're talking about. It's I failed to actually connect to something and send. It'll wait an hour before it tries again. So email settings. I'm going to show you how to connect to Amazon SES fairly in depth. And so I'm going to just nope out of here for now. If you choose to do all your testing through PHP Mail, understand that these settings are going to be facilitated by your host, and you're going to have to go actually figure out which monitored email addresses you want and set up a folder for bounces and unsubscribe requests. This is fairly easy. I mean, PHP Mailer will just use the mailer to send out. Bam. And this is the way you set it if you want to send immediately. We're going to set to queue when we go to Amazon SES, and then I'm going to actually configure things and explain all the integration settings at that time. So that's going to be one of the very first videos coming out in this series. And I'm going to try to keep them tight and close together for people who are watching this series, so that you get the one installer cron jobs. So I'm going to do the cron jobs video as quick as I can and get it up to YouTube also. And then I will go back and I'll hit the Amazon SES settings. So here's your contact settings. Automatically import in the background if the CSV has more rows than 0. And that's fine. I have no reason to change that. And I'm not importing at this point anyways. Landing page settings. I don't ever say yes here, and I don't put my analytics scripts here because I normally put that tracking into the tracking settings. So we'll just apply, and then we'll click tracking settings and we'll look at that. Alright, so the tracking here, you need to turn this stuff on. And so I've turned on all 3 of them. And then if you've already got a Facebook business account and you've got a Facebook pixel, you just have to put the pixel code in here, not the actual code, but the number that is your pixel ID. And then you'll enable tracking on these. Same goes. But the cool part is now you can enable on Mautic landing pages and enable on Mautic landing pages. And so you can just actually enable that tracking from the last settings right here. And so that's where I always do it. I actually don't think I remember there was a landing page settings in here until I started scrolling through. When it comes to queue settings, what you'd use this for is if you're having latency issues with your mail server because of how many emails you're sending, so heavy traffic. There are a couple different protocols way beyond the scope of this tutorial because we're just trying to get you up and running-ish. And I don't want to make these videos too terribly long. Text message settings. I'm not touching on this, mostly because there's never been a setting in here. I presume you can put a plugin in to work with text messages, and I'm going to figure that out. So I'm going to come back to this for sure at some point, because I do want to be able to send SMS from Mautic. I just haven't personally had a client that needed this yet. And the one client I did have that wanted it, we just set up a Zap because it was so much faster and easier on me, because I could do it without pulling up a website or like that. I lazied out is all I'm saying, but I know that there's got to be a way since they've got this here. User authentication settings, I never play in here either. I just leave this default. But I do promise I'm going to look into all this more, but I don't want to start giving you like... I have a pretty good idea what all these things are, but I would hate to misinform users about this stuff. So literally, we're not going to play with that. Same basically goes for webhook settings. Unless you have a reason to change these settings, don't do it. They work just fine out of the box. They're good. And then you can do social tracking, and so we'll reflect on that also in a future video. So I know a lot of these bots, I just set a future video, but really what that means is you can ignore it for now if you're setting up your very first Mautic install, because they're already set up in such a way that they will succeed for you. I'm going to click Save and Close. I mean, those are all saved already anyways. And we have essentially got to the point where you need mail settings finished up, and you need the cron jobs set up. The truth is that if you set up the cron jobs right now, you could mail out without doing anything more, because it's set to PHP mailer, right? But you'd want to at least set up bounce management, which you can do with PHP mailer. But again, I strongly suggest for anything other than basic texting, like emails to people you know, from people you know, do not put PHP mailer into your production environment, especially if it's your first go at this email automation thing, this marketing automation thing, because if you make a mistake and you get your domain and your IP blacklisted, maybe you can move IPs, but it's going to be hard to get yourself back to good with the internet without like some serious changing of everything. And that would be tragic if you've put a lot of effort into it before you got here. So the next video is going to be how to set up the cron jobs. I appreciate your time, and love you guys.